Four Crowns. Episode 7, The Catalyst. Written by Mia. By the morning after the convening, every house in Vaymore had stopped wondering whether to fight over who ruled the city and started maneuvering over who would own the woman who could level it. I'd traded one war for a worse one, and the worse one had my name on it. You could feel it in the tower. The four of them had gone from guarding a keystone to guarding a target. Bram never more than a room away, Sable barely sleeping, Cass's jokes gone thin and watchful, Rune quietly reinforcing the old water wards in the walls. And the offers had started coming. House Flame's lord sent gifts. House Iron's council requested an audience. Even House Tide, which had thrown Rune away to save itself, suddenly remembered it had a champion bound to the source and might like him back. Everyone wanted a thread to the most powerful thing in the city, and the most powerful thing in the city was a bartender who still slept badly and still wouldn't give back her paring knife. There'd been an attempt already, the second night. Not a maid thing this time, but a person, one of House Iron's own undercaptains, promised something by someone who slipped a blade into the tower meaning to put it in my throat while I slept, on the theory that a dead source is at least a source nobody else can hold. Bram had felt it coming 3 rooms away. The bond again, always the bond, and had the man disarmed and sobbing before I'd fully woken, and then stood in my doorway shaking, not from the fight, but from the nearness of the loss, and I'd had to talk him down from a rage that would have ended with his own house's captain in pieces. That was the new shape of my life. Everyone I'd ever met wanted something. Now an entire city did, and the wanting had knives. I lay awake after, for threads pulled tight and frightened around me, and understood I could not keep living as a prize for men defended. I had to become something the city was afraid to reach for, and to do that, I had to know what I actually was all the way down before someone who already knew used it to take me apart. I need to know what I am, I told the 4 of them. Not the city's version. The real one. Sable's mother said the old keystones weren't anchors. They were hidden on purpose, that I'm something worse than a source. I'm tired of finding out what I am from the people who want to use it. Somebody in this city remembers. Take me to them. It was Rune who knew where to go. Of course it was. The quiet ones always know where the old things are kept. The Deep Keep was beneath the Tide District, below even the curing pools, in still black water that predated the 4 houses, and the thing that lived there was not a person so much as a memory the city had drowned on purpose and kept alive to consult and fear. The Keeper, older than the Accord, older than the houses, a voice in the dark water that had watched every keystone Vaymore ever made. The last of the founding line, it said, when I stood at the edge of the black pool with 4 champions at my back. Come to ask the question they all come to ask, and that we drown ourselves down here to avoid answering. What are you? The water moved. I'll tell you, little catalyst, since you asked it plainly, which none of them ever do. You are not the keystone. You were never the keystone. The 4 houses named you Keystone, the way frightened people name the loaded gun a paperweight. Then what's the keystone for? To hold the Accord, to anchor 4 powers so none can rule. The water stilled, but the Accord is a cage, child, and a cage needs a lock, and your bloodline was never the lock. Your bloodline is the thing the cage was built to hold. Before the 4 houses, before the Accord, there was one power in Vaymore, undivided, whole, world-shaping, and it lived in your line. The founders couldn't kill it and couldn't wield it, so they did the only thing left. They split it. 4 ways. Shadow, flame, tide, iron. 4 shards of one whole, handed to 4 houses, set against each other so that no house could ever reassemble the thing your blood used to be. The accord isn't a peace. It's a containment. For houses holding 4 pieces of you apart, forever, calling it civilization. The keeper's voice was almost gentle. And a catalyst, little one, is the thing that makes split pieces want to come back together. That's what you are. Bind you to all 4 houses, and you don't anchor them. You start very slowly to reunite them through yourself, through the bond, through 4 men who are each carrying a quarter of the thing you used to be whole. I stood at the edge of the black water with 4 threads humming in my chest, shadow, flame, tide, iron, for shards of one drowned power, and understood, finally, all the way down, what the right had actually done. That's why I can broadcast, I said slowly. Why I poured into Cass's fire. Why the bond so. It's not 4 men I'm falling for. It's 4 pieces of one thing, trying to come home through me. Yes. And if they finish, if the 4 pieces come all the way back together, through me, then the 4 houses end, the keeper said, because there is nothing left to hold apart, and Vaymore as it has existed for 300 years simply stops, and what your bloodline was before the founders broke, it walks the world again, whole, in you and the 4 you've bound. A pause in the dark. Some would call that the end of the city. Some would call it the city's healing. The founders called it the apocalypse and drown me down here for saying otherwise. You'll have to decide for yourself which it is. But understand the size of what you're holding, catalyst, before someone who's already decided takes the choice away from you. Why hide me then? I said into the dark water. If I'm so dangerous, why not drown me down here with you, or kill the line outright? The founders broke the power 4 ways. Why keep the catalyst alive at all? The water was quiet a long moment, because a cage that can never be opened is just a tomb, the keeper said. The founders were cruel, not stupid. They split the power and bound the houses and drowned the truth, but they could not quite bring themselves to make it permanent, because permanent meant the city could never heal, only contain, forever, world without end. So they left a key, one catalyst hidden in every generation, a door at the back of the cage, in case a day ever came when Vaymore was ready to stop being 4 frightened houses holding each other's throats and become whole again. The 4-colored light shivered on the black water. You are not a weapon they failed to bury, little one. You are a mercy they couldn't quite believe in. The question of your whole life, the one 4 houses will kill to answer for you, is whether this city is a thing that deserves to be healed, or only a thing that has to be contained. The founders couldn't decide. That is why I'm down here. Be braver than they were. Or don't. But decide it yourself, before someone decides you're only ever a weapon and treats you like one until it comes true. I climbed back up out of the deep heap into the 4-colored evening with the whole weight of it on me, and the 4 of them were waiting, and I looked at them differently now and couldn't stop. For shards of one drowned whole. That was why the bond didn't feel like 4 separate wantings. That was why, when all 4 threads pulled tight at once, I felt not like a woman with 4 lovers, but like a thing remembering its own shape. Sable's cold strategy and Bram's fierce loyalty and Cass's bright grief and Rune's deep stillness, for quarters of one enormous old power, for men raised by 4 houses to never, ever come back together, and a right that had just bound all 4 to the one bloodline that could make them whole. You've gone quiet, Sable said. That's new. You're never quiet. I know what I am now. I looked at the 4 of them in the 4-colored dusk. And I know what we are. And I'm not going to tell you yet, because I need a night where you're just 4 men I'm not allowed to choose between, before you become 4 pieces of a thing the whole city will die to keep apart. My voice caught. Give me that. One night where it's just us, before it's the end of the world. And they did. I won't tell you all of it, some provenance you keep, but I'll tell you that for one night in the high tower the 5 of us stopped being Keystone and Champions, Source and Houses, Catalyst and Shards, and were just 5 people who'd each been broken and thrown away and had somehow, impossibly, found the others. Cass made everyone laugh and for once didn't flinch when I told him it mattered. Rune held without being asked and let himself be held without being asked. Sable left his wall down the whole night, the bricked window open, and let me feel him, the cold, lonely, brilliant truth of him, on purpose, where I could see. And Bram stopped being the one you send first and let himself, just once, be the one who got to stay. For Shards, one night, almost whole. It was the happiest I had ever been, and I knew, the way I always knew, that the universe does not let people like me keep things, and that the bill for it was already on its way up the tower stairs. There was a moment near the end of that night that I keep. Rune had finally fallen asleep. Actually asleep, the holder, gone under at last with his head in my lap, and Cass had stopped performing and gone quiet and real in the lamplight, and Bram was a warm wall at my back, and Sable, awake as always, was watching the 4 of us with an expression I'd never seen on him. Not strategy, not even want, but a kind of stunned arithmetic that kept failing to balance. I keep trying to calculate the cost of this, he said softly, so as not to wake Rune. It's what I do. I find the price of things. And I can't find the price of this one. And it's terrifying because a thing with no price is a thing you can't protect by being willing to pay for it. Maybe that's the point, I said. Maybe some things you don't protect by being willing to lose them. Maybe you just have them. And it's terrifying, and you have them anyway. He looked at me a long time in the lamplight. The coldest man in Vaymore, wall down, a sleeping rival's head in my lap, and 2 more of his ancient enemies breathing slow around us, and said, I've spent my whole life being the one who pays. I don't know how to just have a thing. I know, I said. Neither do I. We'll be terrible at it together. And for 1 second the 4-shard thing in my chest felt almost whole, and almost like joy, and almost safe. It came at dawn, in the shape of Cass's father. House Flame's lord, the beautiful, cold, smiling man who'd looked at me in the throne room like a thing he meant to acquire, came to the tower himself, alone, which should have warned us, and he was so very warm and so very reasonable, and he had a proposal. You've worked out what she is, he said to the 4 of us, pleasant as poison. Of course you have. The catalyst. For Shards, one reunion, the end of the houses. Which means, my boys, that the 4 of you are currently the most dangerous object in Vaymore, for quarters of a god, walking around in one tower, slowly coming back together through a bartender. He smiled at Cass, and there was no warmth in it at all, the same no warmth I'd clocked in the throne room. The other houses are going to come for her. Shadow already tried. She'll try again, cleaner. And when they come, they will not collar the source. They've realized that's not enough. They're going to take the 4 shards and scatter them. Kill 3 of you, cage the 4th and the girl, and make very sure the pieces never come back together again. That's the move now. That's what who holds the source actually meant. He spread his hands. I'm here to offer you the only deal that keeps all 4 of you breathing. House Flame takes the catalyst into protective custody. Just Flame. We hold her. We hold all 4 threads through her, and we use what she is to end the other 3 houses before they end us. One house made whole, made a god, instead of 4 scattered corpses. His cold eyes found mine. It's the sensible move, Keystone. It's even the survivable one. The only price is that the city becomes ours, and you become the engine of it. And these 3-inch, shadow, tide, iron, kneel or die. No, I said. I thought you might say that. And House Flame's lord looked at his own son, at Cass, with the bored contempt of a man who'd spent 26 years deciding the boy was a spare, and said the thing that turned a proposal into a trap, which is why I didn't actually come to ask you. I came to give my useless son one chance to finally be worth something to his house. Kya? He said it like a transaction. Bring me the catalyst by moonrise, willing or not, and House Flame will name you heir. Refuse, and I'll have already told the other 3 houses exactly where the 4 shards sleep, and exactly how to scatter them. And your brothers in the bond die in the morning, and it's your fault. The way everything's always your fault. The funny one, the spare. He turned for the door. You've never once chosen right in your life, boy. Let's see if the Keystone taught you anything before you get her killed. And he was gone, and the 4 of them stood frozen in the dawn light, and I felt it down all 4 threads at once. The trap closing, perfect and cruel, built by a father who knew exactly where his son was softest. Betray the woman he loved and the brothers he'd bled with, and become, at last, the valued son. Or refuse, and watch House Flame's lord scatter the bond and start the slaughter, and carry that too. Cass wasn't grinning. Cass was looking at me with his bright, terrified eyes, the spare, the unchosen, holding the whole city's fate in the one pair of hands his own father had spent a lifetime calling worthless, and I understood that Sable's mother had never been the real knife. This was the one aimed at the softest of the 4, and moonrise was 11 hours away. To be continued. That was episode 7 of 4 Crowns. If the 4 of them have you now, the next episode is already waiting. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The complete book is on Amazon, and early episodes plus bonus scenes are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
Mia.
Thank you for listening.